So your classroom minutes are precious, right? Some of us as teachers only have like 42 minutes to get through an entire reading and writing lesson, quick connection to vocabulary, whatever it might be, and then you wrap up with your grammar review. Maybe you're able to squeeze bell ringers and silent reading. There is a lot going on, and there is so much to learn and practice with our students in such little time. So what I want to walk you through is a learning stations activity that's going to help you shorten those transitions in your classroom in order to make up as much space as possible for learning and growth when it comes to time. So some things to keep in mind before I explain this activity is that I recommend using this resource in the beginning of the school year to set students up to, transition and work well in groups all year. But if that time has passed by the time you're watching this, no worries. You can absolutely apply this resource later in the school year just as a reset if your classes need it. So before we dive in, make sure that you hit subscribe where you're watching this video for more like this one. So most of the activities in these learning stations are not based specifically on language arts learning other than, speaking and listening skills. Instead, these are activities that require teamwork, critical thinking, all that stuff without prior language arts knowledge. And this is so that students can really focus on practicing transition and group work procedures without that added pressure of academics to it. And again, if you're an EB Teachers Club member, you already have access to these exact activities done for you inside of our club. You can search in your EB Resource Marketplace by searching for Learning Stations, interactive activities to practice small group work. Now, if you're not an EB Teachers Club member yet, I'm going to share some ideas for you on how you can set this interactive activity up in your own classroom, as well as implement it with your students this year. So first, I want to start with the setup. In advance of doing this learning stations activity in your classroom, you'll need to prepare 5 station activities that students will rotate through in small groups. So here are some ideas that you can utilize. Station 1 can be a rebus puzzle, and these are like brain teasers that use, pictures, symbols, or letters to represent words, phrases, or sentences. So these are puzzles like the word all sandwiched between the words days and work, and that translates into the phrase, all in a day's work. So for this particular station, you would come up with about 7 or 8 rebus puzzles for students to solve. You can find these online, and just print them on a piece of paper and leave them at the first station along with some directions for students how to solve each puzzle. Station number 2 could be something like puzzling words. And for this station, you can use a site like puzzlemaker.com to easily create a word search with about 15 words of your choice. And we like to use figurative language for our words. And at this station, students will need to find all 15 words in the puzzle, but they don't know what the words are that they are looking for. Instead, you have just 15 definitions, and students will need to figure out what the word is that matches a particular definition, and then they're going to find it in the word search. Station number 3, word ladders. So to prepare for this station, you'll create a few word ladders using only a starting and an ending word at the top and the bottom of a rung of a ladder. So students at this station will start with the word on the top rung and change one letter at a time, forming real English words every single time, as they aim to use as few rungs as possible to get to the word at the bottom rung. Now, this might be easier if I give you kind of an example. So imagine a picture of a ladder with 5 rungs, and on the bottom rung, you would write the word smart. On the top rung, you would write the word story. Then students would start with the word story at the top and change one letter at a time until they can make the word smart. So this might look like story, store, stare, start, and then smart. So you can create your own word ladders, use ChatGPT, or you can even just Google examples to use to give your students. All right, in station number 4, we call rhyme time. And at this station, you'll prepare 7 or so riddles that students need to answer. And the answer should be 2 words that rhyme. Again, ChatGPT, Google are gonna be your best friends for finding those ready to go riddles. So for example, what is a soft item that insects can walk on? A bug rug. Silly, but fun. All right, station number 5, this is group picture. So you wanna come up with 5 questions for group members to answer at this station. And the questions can be lighthearted, they can be silly, they can encourage students to get to know more about each other. And each question should have 3 possibilities, with one of the possibilities being a tie. So depending on what answers the majority of the group gives, students will draw a picture based on the directions you provide for each possibility. So I wanna give you an example. So one of your questions might be, would you rather go in the past and meet your ancestors, or go in the future and meet your great-great-great-grandchildren. And if most of the students say ancestors, then you would have students draw a house with 2 windows. And if most of your students said great-great-grandchildren, they would draw a house with 3 windows. And if it was a tie, they would draw a house with 4 windows. So you kind of get where I'm going with this, right? Your questions are going to continue like that until your students create an original picture based on the instructions for each possibility. Okay, so it's going to look different depending on what their questions are and how they answer them. So once you've prepped these 5 different learning station activities and you've made enough copies of each activity so that every student in your class can complete one, you'll place them right around your classroom, creating 5 different stations. Then, on the day of the activity, you will start by talking about transitions with the class. So you can even ask your class, how long do you think it would take to pick up your stuff and move without running from this desk in the corner of the room to that desk in the other corner of the room? And students will likely give you answers in the form of seconds. They might say 10 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever. If students give a long answer like 3 minutes, you can model it yourself to show them how quick the process can actually be. So what we're doing is we're modeling this behavior for them. So then you can ask your students, when I ask you as your teacher to move locations in the classroom, do you always move that quickly, or what might slow the process down? And you can explain that moving from one activity to another, right, with our 8th graders know this is a transition, but our 5th graders might need to know that information. And you can talk about things that slow down transitions, like actual physical obstacles, right? For example, chairs to walk around, students standing in the way, students not hearing or listening to directions, students might stop to chat, students leave their items out on their desk and they have to go back for them or whatever it might be. And what you can do then is you can explain to your students that today your class is going to become the most efficient in the whole school, right? After this lesson, your students are going to be able to transition between activities in less than X number of seconds. It might be 20 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever it might be. Now, something to note, if you do this activity with your students, using a timing marker that works for you and your classroom space is really important. So for some classes, 15 seconds is attainable, while others might need a full minute. And especially if you have students with mobility issues, you can also leave, out the exact time and not have it be timed and simply say that students need to move on the signal, they need to not waste time, so that students who can't move quickly don't feel like they're slowing anyone down. So just something to keep in mind as you're doing this in your classroom. So then after you explain this to your students, you're going to put them into groups of 3 or 4, make sure they have a pen or a pencil, and explain that at each station they visit, they will have an activity that they get to complete. And then you will explain to students that this activity is designed to help them practice moving from one station to another quickly and efficiently, as well as using teamwork to accomplish the tasks at each station. So you can even brainstorm as a class. What does it look like when groups are working as a team and accomplishing a task? Is everybody participating? Is the noise level at a certain volume, etc., things like that. Then you can explain to your class that you are going to tell each group which station to go to, and they will begin work once every group is at a station and you have given them the signal. So if you don't have any students with mobility issues, we recommend pulling out a timer here. This can even be done on your phone. I always counted at the front of my classroom. I said you have 20 seconds left, 19 seconds left, etc. And you can explain, every time I ask you to transition, I'm going to set the timer for 20 seconds or whatever you feel is best for your class. And your student's job is to calmly, efficiently move to the next new station within that time. And you will be at each station for 10 minutes, however you're going to set it up with your students at a time. And then you're gonna let your students know that as they work through this activity, that you're gonna be giving them warnings when they only have a few minutes left at each station. Then when it's time to rotate, you'll give students the directions to move clockwise to the next station. And you can even use your timer if you are using one to see, just how quickly can your students actually calmly rotate through these stations. So if the first transition is not perfect, and it probably won't be, give your class advice on how to improve for the next transition. Have a little conversation about it, right? Every time students rotate to a new station, that's an opportunity to provide reminders, to give praise, and you can repeat this procedure until students have completed all 5 stations. This might take you more than one class period, and that's totally fine, not a big deal. But just a reminder, to praise students for the positive behaviors that you observe before they continue on to the next station. So you're just really enforcing the type of behavior that you want to have as you're using stations in your classroom. Once all the stations are finished, and you finish this activity, students go back to their original seats, remind them that that is a transition too. It can be really helpful to wrap this activity up with a reflection. So you might ask your students the following questions that you can see on your screen here. What challenges or obstacles did you and your group face in transitioning from one station to another? Did you overcome them? How did you overcome them? How did you help your group complete the station tasks? What did this station's activity teach you about working in a group and moving from one activity to another? You could even ask your students, do you have any advice for your classmates or for your teacher for making transitions or group work even smoother next time? And what's great about taking the time to do a trial run of exactly how your students should transition among activities in your class, as well as practice the opportunity for them to meet the expectations of small group work, is that this is going to be time well spent at the beginning of the year. It really sets your students up for success and will actually make you look forward to assigning group work because they know what to do. They know what the expectation is. So let us know if you give this activity a try with your own students. We would absolutely love to hear about it.